All praise, all glory, all honors most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith. And I count it truly a blessing each and every time that I can come before you to preach the word of God. And never do I count it as a light thing to do so. Just a little bit about the household of faith. We meet every Saturday, which is the Sabbath, at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center Room, LC 105. That's 3400 Broadway, Gary, Indiana. Again, that's the household of faith. We meet every Sabbath, which is Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center Room, LC 105, 3400 Broadway in Gary, Indiana. We invite you to come out and worship with us where you can hear the uncut, unadulterated word of God. That is a guarantee. You can also catch us right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel for live streaming. Again, that's 1 p.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday. You can also catch us. We have a radio broadcast that comes on every Sunday at 4 p.m. on WLTH 1370 AM, the region's choice. Again, our radio broadcast airs every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on WLTH 1370 AM, the region's choice. You can also, if you're not in the Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana area, you can also live stream those radio broadcasts right on the WLTH 1370 AM website. Just go to the live streaming option. You can also catch us, or I would want to also, so we have a new website. You can visit our website. It's www.israelteach. That's one word, ISRAELTEACH.org. Again, that's www.israelteach.org. Okay, that's our new website. All right, brothers and sisters, and with that, I want to deal with the new covenant. Simply the new covenant. You know, many people, so-called Christians, New Testament Christians, believe that because they're under the New Testament that they don't have to keep the law of God. And what we're going to do is we're going to just basically deal with what the covenant is. A covenant is an agreement, okay? And we're going to find out about this agreement that was made, the old covenant, and then we're going to see the new covenant. So we're going to go from the old covenant, see who it was made with, and what were the conditions of the new covenant. And we're going to even see who the new covenant is made with and the conditions of that. Okay, and what that's all about. And we're going to see if the law of God is done away with the new covenant. We're going to find that it's not. So this lesson is entitled simply the new covenant. But before we get into the new covenant, we want to go back to the Old Testament, the foundation, and see the old covenant, or the covenant that was made with the children of Israel. And right here, we want to see the proposal of the new, or of a covenant. Okay, the proposal of a covenant or an agreement, just like marriage is a covenant. Okay, that's an agreement between two individuals. When you sign a contract, okay, that's a covenant. Let's see the covenant between God and his people. This is Exodus 19 and verse 1, because here again, the proposal is made. This is Exodus 19 and 1. It says, in the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. All right, so Israel comes into the wilderness of Sinai. They've been delivered from Egyptian bondage. It says, for they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai, had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mountain. Verse 3, and Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel. So right now you have a mediator. What's a mediator? A mediator is a go-between. Okay, a mediator, you have two parties, and then you have somebody in the middle, a go-between that connects the two parties. Okay, they make the arrangements, that can basically act as a go-between when you have arrangements to be made between two parties. So here Moses is like making intercession. Okay, he intercedes on behalf of the people. You see that when they made that golden calf. Okay, the high priest were intercessors, okay? But then you have a mediator of the covenant, okay? You have Moses. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, tell them the conditions of this covenant. Verse 4, ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bear you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. So now you've seen how I am indeed God. Okay, so you understand that I'm God. Then he says something. Because here we see the covenant. He says, now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. So he says, if you will keep my covenant, then you will be a peculiar treasure above, and you will be above all nations, for all the earth is mine. Then he says, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation, sanctified. That's what holy means, sanctified. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. Okay, so here you got one party who was God telling the mediator what he's going to tell to the other party, the one that he's going to make the arrangements or the covenant with. So it says in verse 7, and Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. So now he gives them the conditions of the covenant. And what did the people say? And all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. So now that go-between takes the words that were spoken by the children of Israel. They said they agreed. They said, okay, so a proposal is made of a covenant. And they agreed to the conditions, and then he brings that back to the Lord. All right, so let's go to Exodus 24 and see where this actually is accepted. It's just like if you have some terms or conditions, and you have a go-between in a company, two companies come together. One saying one thing, they have a go-between. Mediator might be a lawyer or somebody, a liaison of some type. He goes and takes that news to the other party. And then what do? They come together finally and sign the contract. That's just like you see that with nations. They'll have an ambassador. He'll be speaking upon behalf of somebody or as an impartial. Like when you see in the Middle East, you might see, so-called Middle East, you might see one that's supposed to be impartial, right? That's not a part of those nations will come and say, okay, what's your terms? And they'll take it to that party and say, or that nation, what's your terms? They come together and they might come and they might, if they agree, they might make a treaty. Okay. But so here you see the acceptance of the covenant, this or the agreement between God and his people. Say, you obey me and keep my covenant, the terms of my covenant, all these laws, then you'll be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. I'll make you a kingdom and a nation of priests, a holy nation. That's the agreement. This is Exodus 24 and let's just start at verse 1. It says, and he said unto Moses, come up unto the Lord, thou and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but they shall not come nigh, neither shall the people go up with him. Okay. Verse 3, and Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words of the Lord have said, will we do. So again, they're agreeing to the terms of this covenant. Verse 4, and Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and builded an altar under the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, so he builds this altar. Okay, this is a type of tabernacle, if you will, a place to make sacrifice. Okay, and he sent young men of the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen unto the Lord. Okay, so now they've accepted this, and now blood has been shed. Okay, for this covenant, and offerings have been made. Verse 6, and Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant. Okay, so he took the book of the covenant. Okay, all the words of the Lord, and it says, and read in the audience of the people. And they said, all that the Lord has said, will we do and be obedient. It's just like when you come into a type of covenant to buy a house. They will give you all this big, thick packet of things to read, right? So it is, you had a book of the covenant. And it says he read it so the people will understand what they're getting into. That's what's going on. And again, the people say, all that the Lord have said, will we do and be obedient. Verse 8, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant, which the Lord hath made with you concerning all these words. So now the people come into a covenant with God, blood is shed, and they come up under that blood. And the mediator here. So that's what took place. Let's go to Deuteronomy 5, because Moses recounted this. Because the people we know that they didn't do what they were supposed to do according to this covenant. But nevertheless, here it is recounted that a covenant was indeed made. So, and it says in verse 1 of Deuteronomy 5, and it says Deuteronomy 5, and Moses called all Israel and said unto them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them and keep and do them. So here is agreement, and a covenant has been made. Based on what though? Based on the keeping of the law. You keep these laws, you'll be a peculiar treasure unto me. That's just like you read in Deuteronomy 28. Blessings if you obey, cursings if you disobey. So here, these laws are rehearsed here, and this generation is taught the law. It says in verse 2, the Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. So again, it's rehearsed. He's reminding them of what took place. This is verse 3. It says, the Lord made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day. Okay, so he made this with us, right? This wasn't something that we go far back. Like now we're talking about the children of Israel today, talking about what our forefathers did. But they say, hey, the Lord appeared unto us and made a covenant with us. It said, the Lord talked with you face to face in the mount, out of the midst of the fire. Then it says, I stood between the Lord and you at that time as a go-between. It says, to show you the word of the Lord, for ye were afraid by reason of the fire and went not up into the mount, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Thou shalt have none other gods before me. Right? So then he started talking about how they should deal with this true and living God, basically by having no other gods and keeping his commandments. Because it says something about him. It says in verse 10, it's showing mercy unto thousands. Well, let me read verse 9. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. You made a covenant with him. Then said, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Okay, so it was about the keeping of the commandments. Now, we know that they broke that covenant. We know that Israel went astray. And we know that, but one thing we also know is that the Messiah was to come into the world. And let's see what he said when he came into the world about a covenant. This is Matthew 26. This is Matthew 26, because back in the old days, the blood was shed of animals for the covenant. And the people, they sprinkled the blood on the people, right? And then the old covenant, keep the laws of God. But here we're going to see the new covenant. This is Matthew 26 and verse 26. This is what happened at the time of the Passover. At the last Passover, Jesus will partake in, because he died on the Passover. So it says in Matthew 26 and 26, and as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body, right? So that represented his body being broken, right? It says, and he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it. But this is my blood of the New Testament, right? So blood had to be shed. And what it wasn't shed of bulls and of goats, but rather his blood as the sacrificial lamb. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission or the forgiveness of sins. Okay, so that's what you needed. So this is the new covenant, right? Again, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission or the forgiveness of sins. That's why it was shed. Let's go to Hebrews 10, because the author of Hebrews tells us that his sacrifice was a shadow. This is Hebrews 10 and Hebrews 10 and we'll just start at verse 1. It says, and we're going to see how this new covenant and the conditions of it and who brought that in, it was superior. This is Hebrews 10 and verse 1. It says, for the law, having a shadow of good things to come and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offer year by year continually make the comers thereunto perfect. Right? See, those sacrifices of blood of the bulls and of goats, right, and of animals don't make you perfect. Right? How you made perfect is only with the sacrifice of Christ. That's what he was sacrificed for the forgiveness of sins. Then it says in verse 2, but then will they not have ceased to be offered? Why you have to keep sacrificing if they were made you perfect? It said, because that the worshipers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. It says, or consciousness of sins. But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins, right? They can't take away sin. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he says, sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. All right. It says, in burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, thou hast had no pleasure. Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me to do thy will, O God. Okay. What was I talking about? I was talking about Jesus. It says above, when he says sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offering for sin, thou wouldest not, neither hadst pleasure therein, which are offered by the law. Right. Because that is a semblance or a show that sin has taken place. Then said he, lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. Then it says in verse 10, by the which will we are sanctified or set apart. We've had sanctification through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all, not sacrificing animals continually. You see that right now. The people that don't call themselves Jews don't believe in that Jesus was the Messiah. They believe that they should be sacrificing animals again, over and over, because it was no. It says in verse 11, and every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices which can never take away sin. But why do it? Because it was a shadow of what was to come. So prior to it coming, you show the shadow of it in those sacrifices. It said, but this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God. And what is he doing right there? Making intercession. Verse 13, from henceforth expecting to his enemies be made his footstool. He's sitting on the right hand of the Father, waiting for his foes to be made his footstool. You can read that in 110 Psalms. It says in verse 14, for by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified. By that one offering of him, perfect lamb without blemish and without spot. See, you had to be a human being that was perfect, because the lambs didn't sin. But again, that was a shadow of what was to come. God coming up off his throne, coming into a flesh and blood man, walking a sinless life, and then dying for the sins of the world and being resurrected. And now going back up to the Father, sitting on the right hand as an intercessor. It says, whereof the Holy Ghost also it is a witness to us, for after that he has said before, this is the covenant that I will make with them after those days. Saith the Lord, I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. See, that's the New Testament or the new covenant. See, the new covenant is not about you coming under the blood of Jesus and now you just doing whatever you want to do now. Not having to say, well, I'm under I don't have to worry about those old commandments. That's not what's happening here. Now I'm going to keep reading this, then we're going to go back to where Jeremiah talked about the new covenant. But this is verse 17. It says, and their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. Now where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin, right? When you have true remission, he said, this is the bloodshed for the new testament, for the remission of sins, or the forgiveness of sins. That is only coming through him. But let's go to Jeremiah 31. This is Jeremiah 31 and verse 31, because this is nothing new. It was told about this covenant that would be made with his people. This is Jeremiah 31 and verse 31. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. So who is this new covenant made with? The same people that the old covenant was made with. But let me hold your finger there. Let me say something, because it don't think that this just means that nobody else can be a part of that. This is Isaiah 56 and verse 3. I want to read this here, because again, even though the covenant was made, the old covenant was made with Israel, the new covenant was made with Israel. But God is not a respecter of persons. There has always been a commonwealth of Israel. Even, for example, the stranger that wants to serve the true and living God, for example, in the old days, what we do, be circumcised, and then he would keep the Passover, right? He always had a place for the stranger. I'm talking amongst the congregation. This is Isaiah 56 and 3. It says, neither let the son of the stranger that had joined himself to the Lord. So this is somebody who is truly serving God. He says, now let the son of the stranger that had joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, the Lord hath utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. So the stranger can be a part of the commonwealth of Israel. So you listen to Israelites today, many of them, and they will say that no other nation can be saved. All white people going to be destroyed. But what if a white person, what if an or Asian person, somebody who's not of the nationality of Israel, wants to take hold of the God of Israel? What if they're a better brother or sister as far as observance to the law in their faith than the homeborn, than the one that's by lineage, physical lineage? See, God is not a respecter of persons. It says in verse, I'm going to read that again. Verse 3, neither let the son of the stranger that have joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, the Lord hath utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Verse 4, well, thus saith the Lord unto the eunuchs that keep my Sabbaths and choose the things that please me and take hold of my covenant. Even then will I give in mine house and within my walls a place and a name better than of sons and of daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. Also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants, every one that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it and taketh hold of my covenant. Even then will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar. For mine house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. So back to Jeremiah 31. And people don't, a lot of brothers don't want to, a lot of Israelites don't want to acknowledge that, but that's just the reality. You got to take the Bible for what it's saying. Trying to make Cornelius into an Israelite, that's not biblical. But nevertheless, Jeremiah 31 and 31, it says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. So the new covenant is made with the same people that the old covenant is made with. However, if those of other nations want to take hold of that covenant, they can. It says in verse 32, though, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, saith the Lord. Like I said in the beginning, a covenant, like a marriage is a covenant. This is like the church and Jesus. The bride and the bridegroom, they have a covenant. That's a covenant that they came into, an agreement to love, honor, and obey. And the Lord said, I will provide and make you a peculiar treasure. Verse 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. Now we want to find out. Is he doing away with the law? That you don't have to keep God's law anymore. That you're under the new covenant. Because many so-called Christians will say, well, we are under the new covenant. We no longer have to worry about that old law. And like I said Monday, I said that false prophet that was talking about, you trying to keep the commandments of God. You bringing destruction upon yourself. Listen, let's read what the new covenant is about. It says in verse 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. So he's not saying you don't have to keep the law. He's saying, I'm gonna put my law in your heart and in your mind. I'm gonna hold your finger right here. We want to read something in Matthew. Just read something here in Matthew. And just to show you, when Jesus came, he wasn't doing away with the law. He was showing you how to look at the law. First of all, he didn't sin. If the law or the command, if you understand, he was the one who gave the law on Mount Sinai. If you really understand. But nevertheless, he said in Matthew 5:17, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Then he says something here. He says in verse, well, I'm going to keep reading. Verse 18 says, but verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. And all has not been fulfilled. Then he says, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, like that false prophet I was talking about Monday, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. Meaning, you're going to be where the worm died not, and the fire is not quenched. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called the great in the kingdom of heaven. You don't know sin but by the law. For sin is a transgression of the law, like I was dealing with on Monday. It says in verse 24, I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. Then verse 21, because again, Jesus shows you how to look at the law. It says, ye have heard that it is said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill. And that was in the law. He says, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of the fire. Verse 27, ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. That's written in the law. It's one of the 10 commandments. But I say unto you, verse 28, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. That is the law in the mind, brothers and sisters. That's like what Job said, I have made a covenant with my eyes that I should not even look upon a maid. That is having the law in your mind and written in your heart. Meaning you have a totally different mindset. That's tightening the reins. That's just not letting the reins go and saying you don't have to keep the law. He said, the new covenant is saying, I'm going to put my laws in their inward parts. It's going to really be it's not going to be on some stone. It's going to be on your heart. This is verse 34 of Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah, go back to Jeremiah 31. Jeremiah 31 and I'm going to read verse 33 again. Maybe it'll sink in. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. And what is he going to do? It says, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Understand, brothers and sisters, the new covenant is still made with the same people, and it's still dealing with his law. Only this time, he said, I'm going to put the law in your inward parts. Let's go to Hebrews 8. Hebrews 8, and see why a new covenant was certainly needed. Hebrews 8. Hebrews 8. And it wasn't with the fault of God. Let me make that clear. This is Hebrews 8 and verse 7. And read something about this new covenant. It says, and why it was needed. It says, for if that first covenant had been faultless, again, if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, not with him, not with God, but finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. The same people, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continue not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. They broke the arrangement. See, arrangement, a covenant, an agreement was made, and they broke it. Verse 10, it says, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. Understand, we reading in the New Testament, reading about the new covenant. We reading it, same thing we read in the Old Testament in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 33. It says, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. See, he's not doing away with the law. He said it needs to be up here in your mind. When he came, he shined the light on the law, telling you not only should you not commit adultery, don't even look upon a woman to lust after her, for you've committed adultery with her already in your heart. See, because it's written in your mind, it should be written in your mind. And they shall not teach every man, verse 11, and they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness and their sins. Right? For all have sinned and come short, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. And that he said, the new covenant he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So he said, hey, look, there was need for a new covenant because of what the people did, their shortcomings. Well, let's go right into the 9th chapter of Hebrews. The 9th chapter of Hebrews. This is Hebrews 9 and verse 15. It says, and for this cause he is the mediator, talking about Jesus. I'm going to start, I'm going to start at verse 11. This is Hebrews 9 and verse 11. It said, but Christ being come and high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building. His tabernacle, he didn't have to go into the tabernacle, into the most holy place like the high priest, making atonement. He didn't have to go into that tabernacle that was a tent. He went into heaven, which, and understand that which was on earth was patterned after that which was in heaven. So it was a shadow, it was a pattern, but it was pointing to something that was to come. This is verse 12. Neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, talking about heaven, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Not sitting on the same thing year after year after year, according to that old covenant. It said, for if the blood of bulls and of goats and of asses and of heifers sprinkling the unclean sanctified to the purifying of the flesh. Meaning, if the blood of bulls and the goats being sprinkled, if the ashes of a red heifer cleanseth, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal spirit offered himself without spot to God. He was without sin. That's like the lambs had to be without blemish and without spot. He was without sin. Again, it all pointed to him. It says, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. If that type of sacrifice, he said, man, that sacrifice should convict your very conscience. It says it should purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. It says, for this cause, he is the mediator. He is the go-between of the new covenant. But how's he a go-between? Between the people. But Moses is not standing there. The high priest is not standing there. You got the true high priest, which is Christ. He is a king and a priest. And he is the best high priest because he knows about this frail flesh, because he took it upon himself to save the world. So he knows how weak it is, even though he was without sin. He knows what human beings go through temptations and tests and trials. He knows these things. He knows what it means to be tempted by Satan. He understands that. He's the perfect high priest. So you need a go-between between the people and the Father, and that's Jesus. He He is the vine. He is the connection. He is your way to the Father. He is the one, he is the only way that you have redemption. He is the only way that you have forgiveness of sins, remission for sins. He is the go-between. So it says, and for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament. And he was the mediator of that New Testament. That by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament. Because you got to understand, the wage of sin is death. With the Father, the wage of sin is death. You sin, death. See, God is not like man. God cannot dwell with filth. So, okay, without the shedding of blood, there can be no remission of sin. So what does that mean? Somebody's blood has to be shed for sin. There's no getting around that. So whose blood has to be shed? It could be all of humanity's blood, or it could be the blood of a perfect lamb without blemish and without spot. Jesus said, I'll do it. He said, I'll do it. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, Lord, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Blood has to be shed. Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sin. Without the shedding of blood, you don't have atonement. Because sin, again, the wage of sin is death. So now you need blood to be shed. Jesus had to shed his blood for everybody. But well, that would take a hold on his covenant. That would take upon, that would acknowledge it. Right? So he said, okay. He said, okay, it says in verse 15, for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, right? For the fault of the people, right? They said, all the Lord has said, will we do and be obedient? And they were not. They were not. Immediately we went off and made a golden calf. And you read consistently how the children of Israel went astray. So it says, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. So those that are called can receive everlasting life. Verse 16, it says, for where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. Okay, so that was like a will and testament. When he made a New Testament, New Covenant, that's a will and testament of Christ. What does that mean? Because it says, but where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. He had to die. For a testament is a force after men are dead. Right? Now it's in force when there's death. Otherwise, it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Whereupon now that the first testament was dedicated without blood, even the first testament had death. But when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, what did he do? It says in verse 8, says further in verse 19, he took the blood of calves and of goats. See, blood had to be shed, had to be death. With water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the New Testament, which God hath enjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. And almost all things are by the law purged with blood. And without shedding of blood is no remission. Is no remission, brothers and sisters. And with that, brothers and sisters, that's the new covenant. We found out the terms of the old covenant. It was made with the house of Israel. It was about keeping the commandments of God, and he would make them a peculiar church. We found out, first of all, what a covenant is, which is an agreement. And we found out who the mediator was between the go-between, that was Moses. Right? Then what do you see? You see the new covenant, Jesus coming. He coming to saying this is the blood of the new covenant. And we find out the new covenant is made with the same people. And only this time, he's not talking about the law written on stone or scrolls, anything like that. He's talking about it written in your heart, which is the mind. And taking hold of that covenant. And that all people, regardless of nationality, can take a hold of that covenant, even though it's made with Israel, and that is made, no question, is made with Israel. But there's always been a commonwealth. We found out why the covenant was needed, and how it was superior to the old covenant. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we meet every Sabbath at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at Indiana University Northwest Library Conference Center from LC 105 at 3400 Broadway, Gary, Indiana. You can live stream us if you're not in the Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana area, right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel. You can also catch our radio broadcast on WLTH 1370 AM, the region's choice, every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, that's our radio show. Our radio show airs every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on WLTH 1370 AM, the region's choice. You can also check us out. Our new website is www.israelteach.org. That's www.israelteach. Israel Teach is one word, ISRAELTEACH.org. It's always a blessing anytime that I can come before you, brothers and sisters.